Chapter 1. The Omega in the Storm. The rain came down like bullets. Sarah pressed her back against the ancient oak, her breath coming in sharp gasps that burned her lungs. Her clothes were soaked through, clinging to her skin like a second layer of ice. Thunder rolled across the mountain range, and somewhere in the distance, something howled. Not a dog, not a wolf. Something worse. She shouldn't have come this far into the woods. The locals in Greystone had warned her, told her that these mountains held secrets best left undisturbed. But Sarah had been running for 3 months now, and she'd learned that warnings were often just another form of control. Another crack of lightning illuminated the forest, and that's when she saw it. A child, no more than 5 years old, standing barefoot in the mud, his small body trembling. His clothes hung in tatters, and his eyes, his eyes, glowed amber in the darkness. "Hey!" Sarah pushed away from the tree, her survival instincts warring with something deeper, something she couldn't ignore. "Hey, it's okay!" The boy didn't move. He just stared at her with those impossible eyes, his lips moving soundlessly. Sarah took a step closer, her shoes sinking into the sodden earth. "Where are your parents? You shouldn't be out here alone." The moment she reached for him, the boy collapsed. Sarah caught him before he hit the ground, her arms wrapping around his small, too light frame. His skin burned with fever, and his breathing came in shallow pants. Up close, she could see the scratches covering his arms, the way his fingernails looked almost elongated. "What happened to you?" she whispered. The boy's eyes fluttered open. "Mama," he breathed, his voice barely audible over the storm. His tiny hand clutched at her jacket with surprising strength. "Mama, don't leave!" Sarah's heart cracked open. "I won't," she promised, even though she had no idea who this child was or where he'd come from. "I've got you." She needed shelter. The old hunting cabin she'd been squatting in was a mile back through the forest, but carrying him through this storm would be dangerous. She scanned the darkness, and that's when she spotted it. A rocky overhang about 50 yards to the east, just visible through the sheets of rain. It would have to do. Sarah held the boy close to her chest and ran. The overhang provided barely enough shelter, but it kept the worst of the rain off them. Sarah set the boy down gently against the stone wall, shrugging out of her soaked jacket to wrap around him. He was still burning up, his small body racked with shivers. "Stay with me," she murmured, brushing wet hair from his forehead. "Just stay with me, okay?" She had basic first aid supplies in her backpack: bandages, antiseptic, pain relievers. She'd been living rough long enough to know the essentials. But as she examined the boy's injuries more closely, her hands began to shake. The scratches weren't just scratches. They looked like claw marks. Deep, gouges that should have required stitches, yet somehow they seemed to be closing, healing before her eyes. "What are you?" Sarah breathed. "He's mine." The voice came from the darkness beyond the overhang, deep, commanding, and laced with barely controlled fury. Sarah's head snapped up, her body instinctively curving over the boy's. A man stepped into view. No, not a man. Something that wore the shape of a man but radiated pure, predatory power. He was tall, easily 6'4", with broad shoulders and a muscular frame that his rain-soaked shirt did nothing to hide. Dark hair fell across his forehead, and his eyes. His eyes were the same impossible amber as the child's. "Stay back," Sarah warned, her voice steadier than she felt. "I don't know what's going on here, but this boy needs help." The man's jaw clenched. "You have no idea what you've interfered with, human." Human. He said it like a curse word. "I don't care what he is," Sarah shot back. "He's a child, and he's hurt. If you're his father, I am his alpha." The man moved closer, and Sarah could see the tension in every line of his body, like a spring wound too tight. And you need to let him go. Now. No. The word hung in the air between them. The man's eyes flashed, and for a moment, Sarah could have sworn she saw something inhuman looking back at her. Something ancient and dangerous. You dare refuse me? His voice dropped to a growl that vibrated through her chest. I dare protect a scared child, Sarah countered, which is apparently more than you're doing. Lightning cracked overhead, and in that split second of illumination, she saw the raw emotion that flashed across the man's face. Not anger, something far more complex. Pain, fear, and a desperate kind of longing that made her breath catch. The boy stirred in her arms. Kale, he whimpered. Alpha Kale. It hurts. Kale, that was his name. The man's entire body went rigid at the sound of the child's voice. He took another step forward, and Sarah could see his hands trembling. Let me help him, Kale said, and this time his voice was rough with something that sounded almost like pleading. Please. Sarah studied him for a long moment. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to get away from whatever supernatural situation she'd stumbled into. But the boy, this small, broken child, needed help. And despite the danger radiating from this man, despite his predatory grace and inhuman eyes, she saw the truth beneath the surface. He was terrified. Fine, Sarah said slowly, but I'm staying with him. Kale's jaw worked, muscles flexing beneath tanned skin. You don't know what you're asking for. Then explain it to me. Sarah met his gaze steadily. Explain why a child is wandering alone in a storm. Explain those eyes. Explain why you called me human like it's the worst thing you could think of. For a moment, she thought he would refuse. Then Kale knelt beside them, his movements careful and controlled. Up close, she could smell him, pine and rain and something wild, something that made her pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with fear. His name is Eli, Kale said quietly, his large hands infinitely gentle as he touched the boy's forehead. He's an Omega. The pack, they don't want him. Why not? Kale's eyes met hers, and the pain in them was almost unbearable to witness. Because his mother was human. Because he's weak. Because... His voice broke. Because they say he'll never survive his first shift. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She looked down at Eli, at his small face twisted in pain, and felt something fierce and protective flare to life in her chest. How old is he? 4. Kale's hand moved to Eli's hair, stroking it with a tenderness that contradicted everything about his dangerous exterior. He should have shifted already. Every wolf child shifts before their 5th year. But Eli, he can't. And if he doesn't shift by the next full moon, what happens? Kale's expression went dark. The pack will demand his execution. Sarah's arms tightened around Eli instinctively. Over my dead body. A strange expression crossed Kale's face. Surprise, respect, and something else she couldn't name. You don't even know him. I know he's a child who needs protection. Sarah lifted her chin. And I know what it's like to be thrown away. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of rain and Eli's labored breathing. Kale studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle, as if he could see past all her carefully constructed walls to the broken pieces beneath. You'll regret this, he finally said. Maybe. Sarah held his gaze. But I've learned to live with regret. Kale's lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it had held any warmth. Then welcome to our world, Sarah Wade. Let's see if you survive it. She froze. How do you know my name? But Kale had already turned his attention back to Eli, and the thunder swallowed whatever answer he might have given. Chapter 2. The Alpha's Bargain. The storm raged for another hour before finally breaking into a sullen drizzle. Sarah watched as Cale tended to Eli with a precision that spoke of experience and deep care. He'd produced a small vial from his jacket, some kind of silvery liquid that glowed faintly in the darkness. When he'd placed a single drop on Eli's tongue, the boy's breathing had immediately steadied. "What is that?" Sarah asked. "Moon essence." Cale didn't look up from his work. Distilled from wolf's bane under a full moon, it helps stabilize young shifters when they're struggling. "Is it safe?" "Safer than letting him burn himself out trying to shift." Cale's jaw tightened. His body wants to change, but his human blood is fighting it. The essence buys us time. Sarah studied the man before her. In the dim light, she could see the exhaustion etched into his features. Dark circles under those amber eyes. Tension in his shoulders that spoke of sleepless nights. This wasn't just his alpha. This was personal. "Why do you care so much?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Kyle's hands stilled. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, "His mother was the only person who ever saw me as more than a weapon." The raw honesty in his voice made Sarah's chest tighten. "What happened to her?" "She died bringing him into this world." Kyle's voice was barely a whisper. "She made me promise to protect him. To give him the life she never had. One where he could be both human and wolf. Where he wouldn't have to choose. And the pack won't accept that. The pack follows the old ways. Weakness is culled. Half-breeds are abominations." Kyle finally looked up, and the fury in his eyes was matched only by the grief. "I've tried everything. I've challenged their laws, offered my own position as alpha, threatened to disband the entire pack. But tradition runs deep in wolf blood." Sarah absorbed this, her mind racing. "So, what's your plan?" "I don't have one." The admission seemed to cost him. "I've been buying time, hoping Eli would shift naturally. But the full moon is in 3 days, and the Pack Council has made their decision. If he doesn't shift by midnight on the 3rd night..." He didn't need to finish. Sarah understood. Eli stirred in her arms, his small hand clutching at her shirt. "Don't let them take me, Mama," he murmured, still half asleep. The word struck Sarah like lightning. Mama. He'd called her that before, and now again. She should correct him, explain that she was just a stranger who'd found him in the woods. But the desperate trust in his small voice made the words die in her throat. "He thinks you're his mother," Cale said quietly. "Human scent, protective instincts. To a wolf child, those things mean safety. But I'm not, I know." Cale's expression was unreadable. But he doesn't. And right now, his belief in that safety might be the only thing keeping him stable. Sarah looked down at Eli's peaceful face. She'd spent the last 3 months running from her own past, from the engagement she'd fled, from the suffocating expectations of her wealthy family, from a life that had never truly been hers. She'd told herself she was done taking care of others, done sacrificing her own needs for people who would never appreciate it. But this was different. This was a child who'd been abandoned by everyone except one man who was fighting a losing battle against his entire world. "Take me with you," Sarah heard herself say. Cale's head snapped up. "What?" "To wherever you're keeping him. I'll help." The words came faster now, fueled by a reckless determination that she recognized from her own reflection. "You said he needs to believe I'm safe, that I'm maternal. Fine, I'll play the part, whatever it takes to buy him more time." "You have no idea what you're offering." Cale's voice was harsh, but Sarah could see something flickering in his eyes. Hope, maybe, or fear. "My pack doesn't welcome humans. And if they discover you're helping me hide a failed Omega... Failed? Sarah's voice sharpened. He's 4 years old. He's not failed anything. He's just different. Different gets you killed in my world. Yeah, well, different got me disowned in mine. Sarah met his gaze steadily. Maybe that's why I'm still here. Maybe this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken understanding. Two people who'd been marked as outsiders by the worlds they'd been born into, finding common ground in the most unlikely of circumstances. Kale exhaled slowly. If you do this, there's no going back. Once the pack knows you've allied with me, with Eli, you'll be marked. Hunted, if necessary. I've been running for months anyway, Sarah said. At least this time I'll be running towards something that matters. Something shifted in Kale's expression, a crack in the armor he wore. Why? His voice was rough. Why would you risk everything for a child you just met? Sarah thought about her own childhood. The cold mansion, the parents who'd treated her like a business asset rather than a daughter. The fiancé they'd chosen for her, wealthy, connected, and cruel behind closed doors. She thought about the night she'd finally run, leaving behind everything except the clothes on her back, and a desperate need to prove she was more than what they'd made her. Because someone should have done it for me, she said simply. The words hung in the air between them, raw and honest. Kale's amber eyes searched her face, and Sarah felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the torn, wet clothes she wore. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish, Kale finally said. Probably both. Sarah managed a tired smile. Story of my life. Kyle stood in one fluid movement, his hand extended toward her. My cabin is 2 miles north. It's warded against detection. Even pack scouts can't find it easily. We'll be safe there until I figure out our next move. Sarah looked at his hand, large, scarred, and steady despite everything. Taking it would mean stepping fully into a world she didn't understand, binding herself to people she barely knew. Every rational part of her brain screamed warnings. She took his hand. His skin was warm, almost feverish, and when their palms touched, Sarah felt something electric pass between them. Kale's eyes widened slightly, and she knew he'd felt it too. That inexplicable pull that made no sense, and perfect sense all at once. Can you carry him? Kale asked, his voice rougher than before. Sarah nodded, gathering Eli carefully in her arms. The boy sighed contentedly, burrowing against her chest, and something in her heart twisted painfully. Follow me, Kyle said, already moving into the darkness beyond the overhang. Stay close. The woods aren't safe after dark, even for those of us who call them home. Sarah followed, stepping into the unknown with a child in her arms and a dangerous stranger leading the way. She'd come to these mountains looking for escape. Instead, she'd found something far more complicated. She'd found purpose. Chapter 3. Secrets in the Shadows. The cabin materialized from the darkness like something out of a fairy tale. Rough-hewn logs, a stone chimney, and windows that glowed with warm amber light. It shouldn't have existed here, miles from any marked trail. Yet it felt oddly permanent, as if the forest had grown around it rather than been cleared away. How long have you been hiding here? Sarah asked as Kale pushed open the heavy wooden door. 6 months. He stepped aside to let her enter first, his body tense and alert even in this supposedly safe space. Since the Pack Council first declared Eli unfit. The interior was sparse but clean. A main room with a stone fireplace, a small kitchen area, and 2 doors that presumably led to bedrooms. Herbs hung drying from the rafters, and books were stacked everywhere, their spines worn from repeated reading. Sarah laid Eli gently on the leather couch near the fire, The boy stirred but didn't wake, his small chest rising and falling steadily now. The silvery essence had done its work. "There's a bedroom through there," Kale said, gesturing to the left door. "You should rest. You're exhausted." Sarah turned to face him, suddenly aware of how close they were standing in the small space. "I'm not leaving him. I wasn't asking you to." Kale moved past her to stoke the fire, and Sarah caught that scent again, pine and rain and something wild that made her pulse quicken. "But you need sleep. I'll watch over him." "Do you ever sleep?" The question made Kale pause, poker in hand. "Not much. Not anymore." Sarah studied his profile in the firelight. The strong jaw, the way tension lived in his shoulders like a permanent resident. "How long can you keep this up? Fighting your entire pack alone?" "As long as I have to." His voice was flat, final. "That's not an answer. That's a death wish." Kale set down the poker with deliberate care and turned to face her fully. "What do you want me to say? That I'm terrified? That every day I wake up knowing I might lose him? That I might fail the one promise that mattered?" His amber eyes blazed. "That I've been alpha of the Silvercrest pack for 8 years, commanded hundreds of wolves, survived challenges that should have killed me, and none of it means anything if I can't save one small boy?" The raw emotion in his voice stole Sarah's breath. She'd seen glimpses of it before, but now, in the privacy of this hidden cabin, Kale's carefully constructed walls were crumbling. "You're not alone anymore," she said softly. "Not unless you want to be." Something flashed across Kale's face, vulnerability so stark it made her chest ache. "Why are you really doing this, Sarah? The truth this time." Sarah wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the fire's warmth. "You want the truth? Fine." She took a breath. 3 months ago, I was engaged to a man my parents chose for me. Wealthy, connected, perfect on paper. Behind closed doors, he was controlling, possessive. He'd grab my wrist hard enough to bruise if I disagreed with him, then apologize with expensive jewelry. Kale had gone very still, predatory focus locked on her every word. One night, he told me exactly what our marriage would look like. How many children I'd have, when I'd have them, what charities I'd support, how I'd dress, who I'd befriend, where I'd be allowed to go. Sarah's voice hardened. He laid it all out like I was a business acquisition, and when I said no, when I tried to leave, he locked me in our apartment, told me I was being hysterical, that I'd thank him later for protecting me from myself. "How did you get out?" Kale's voice was deadly quiet. "I waited until he went to work, smashed a window, and climbed down the fire escape in my engagement dress." She laughed bitterly. "Sold the ring at a pawn. Sold, shop, bought a bus ticket, and never looked back. My family's probably still looking for me. They don't like losing their investments." The silence that followed felt heavy with understanding. Kale crossed the distance between them slowly, stopping just close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Eli's mother, Elena, she ran away too," he said quietly. "From an arranged mating to a pack leader twice her age. She stumbled onto Silvercrest territory half-starved, and instead of sending her back, I gave her sanctuary." "That's why they hate him," Sarah realized. "Because his mother defied their traditions. Because she chose love over duty. Because she mated with a human man who treated her with gentleness instead of accepting the brutal bond the pack had arranged." Kale's jaw clenched. "And because I allowed it. I told her she could stay, that she'd be protected. I promised her that Silvercrest would be different under my rule, that we could evolve beyond the old ways. But the pack didn't want to evolve. The elders saw it as weakness, allowing a runaway, accepting a human mate, protecting a half-breed child." His hands curled into fists. "When Elena died, They wanted to expose the baby on the mountain. Let nature decide his fate. I refused, and it's been open rebellion ever since. Sarah's heart twisted. That's why you understand. Why you're fighting so hard. I understand what it costs to run from the life others choose for you. And I understand that some things are worth fighting for, even when you're outnumbered. Kyle's eyes met hers, and the intensity in them made her knees weak. But I also understand that people who fight alone usually lose. Then stop fighting alone. The words hung between them, charged with meaning that went beyond Eli's immediate safety. Sarah could see Cale processing them, could almost watch the war happening behind his eyes. Instinct versus self-preservation, hope versus hard-learned caution. You don't know what you're signing up for, he said finally. Pack politics are brutal, and if they discover what you mean to... He stopped abruptly. What I mean to what? Kyle's expression shuddered. Nothing. Forget it. But Sarah had seen something flash across his face. Recognition, fear, and something that looked almost like wonder. Cale... A soft whimper interrupted them. Eli was stirring on the couch, his small face scrunched in distress. Both of them moved immediately, but Sarah reached him first. Hey, sweetheart, she murmured, brushing damp hair from his forehead. You're safe now. Eli's amber eyes opened, unfocused and glassy with fever dreams. Mama? You stayed? I stayed, Sarah confirmed, her throat tight. The boy's hand found hers, gripping with surprising strength. Promise? Promise you won't leave like the others? Sarah looked up at Kyle, saw the pain and desperate hope warring in his expression. She thought about all the promises that had been broken in her life, all the times she'd been let down by people who were supposed to protect her. She'd sworn she'd never make promises she couldn't keep. But looking down at Eli's trusting face, feeling the weight of Cale's gaze, Sarah made a choice that would change everything. I promise, she whispered. I'm not going anywhere. Eli smiled, his eyes drifting closed again. Good. Alpha Cale needs you too. The innocent words landed like a bomb in the quiet cabin. Sarah's eyes flew to Cale's face, but he'd already turned away, his shoulders rigid with tension. Whatever secret he was keeping, whatever truth he'd almost revealed moments ago, it was clear he wasn't ready to share it. But Eli's words echoed in Sarah's mind as exhaustion finally claimed her. Alpha Cale needs you too. Chapter 4. The Scent of Fate. Sarah woke to the smell of coffee and wood smoke. For a disoriented moment, she thought she was back in her childhood home, before remembering that her family's estate had never felt this warm. This lived in. She opened her eyes to find herself on the couch, a heavy wool blanket draped over her body. Eli was gone. Panic spiked through her chest before she heard it. Soft laughter coming from outside. She pushed off the blanket and moved to the window. In the clearing behind the cabin, Cale crouched low to the ground while Eli circled him on unsteady legs, giggling. They were playing some kind of game, and for the first time since she'd found him in the storm, the boy looked like an actual child instead of something broken. He's stronger this morning. Sarah spun to find a woman standing in the kitchen doorway, tall, silver-haired, with eyes that held ancient wisdom. She hadn't heard anyone enter. Who are you? Sarah asked, instinctively defensive. Luna Thorne. I'm the pack healer. The woman moved with fluid grace, setting down a basket of herbs on the small table. And you must be the human who's caused quite the stir. I haven't caused anything. I just helped a child. You did more than that. Luna's sharp eyes assessed her. You bonded with him, with an Omega who's been rejected by his own kind. Do you understand what that means in our world? Sarah crossed her arms. I understand that a 4-year-old needed someone to give a damn about him. A smile ghosted across Luna's lips, spoken like someone who knows what rejection tastes like. She moved to the window, watching Kyle and Eli. The alpha hasn't slept in 3 nights, too afraid to close his eyes in case something happens to the boy. But this morning, when I arrived, I found him actually resting. First time in months. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand what's happening here. Luna turned to face her fully. Kyle isn't just protecting Eli out of obligation. That boy is the last connection he has to Elena, the woman who showed him that alphas could lead with compassion instead of cruelty. Losing Eli would break something in him that might never heal. Sarah's chest tightened. Then help us. You're the pack healer. Surely you have influence. I have knowledge, not power. There's a difference. Luna's expression grew grave. The pack council convenes tomorrow night. They'll demand to see Eli's progress. If he can't shift... She didn't finish. There has to be another way. There is. Luna moved closer, her voice dropping. But it would require something unprecedented. Something that goes against every tradition we hold. What? A pack bond. If Eli were formally adopted by a mated pair, a Luna and her alpha, the council couldn't touch him. He'd be under direct protection of the alpha bloodline. Hope flared in Sarah's chest before reality crashed down. But Kale isn't mated. No. Luna's eyes held something unreadable. Though his wolf has been restless lately. Hunting for something. Or someone. The weight of those words settled over Sarah like a physical thing. I don't understand. Don't you? Luna tilted her head. You're untrained, but even you must feel it. That pull when he's near. The way your heartbeat sinks to his. The fact that Eli imprinted on you within minutes of meeting you. Something that should be impossible for a human. Sarah's mouth went dry. What are you saying? I'm saying that fate has a sense of humor. Luna moved toward the door, then paused. The moon is waxing. In 3 nights, it will be full. That's when the truth will reveal itself, whether you're ready or not. Before Sarah could respond, Luna was gone, disappearing into the forest as silently as she'd arrived. Sarah found Kale and Eli by the stream that ran behind the cabin. The boy was crouched at the water's edge, trying to catch minnows with his small hands, while Kale supervised with an expression that was almost peaceful. Did I miss breakfast? Sarah asked, approaching slowly. Eli's head whipped around, and his face lit up. Mama, look, I caught one. He held up cupped hands, water dripping between his fingers. Sarah knelt beside him, genuinely impressed by the tiny silver fish darting around his palm. That's amazing, Eli. You're a natural hunter. Alpha Kale says if I practice, maybe I can catch bigger fish when I'm a wolf. The hope in his voice was heartbreaking. Do you think I'll be a good wolf, Mama? Sarah's throat tightened. I think you'll be extraordinary. Wolf or not. Eli beamed and returned his attention to the stream. Sarah became acutely aware of Kale standing just behind her, close enough that she could feel the heat of his presence. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. Let him call you that. I know. Sarah stood, brushing dirt from her jeans. But it makes him happy. And right now, that's all that matters. They watched Eli play for a moment in comfortable silence. Then Kale spoke again, his voice rough. Luna told you, didn't she, about the mating bond solution? Sarah's pulse kicked up. She mentioned it, said it was the only way to protect him permanently. It's also impossible. Kale's jaw clenched. I haven't found my mate in 8 years of being alpha. The chances of finding her in the next 3 days? Is that how it works? You just... know? It's instinct. Scent, mostly. A true mate smells like home and heaven and everything you've been missing your entire life. His voice had gone distant, almost reverent. When you find them, your wolf recognizes them instantly. There's no mistaking it. And you've never felt that? With anyone? The silence stretched too long. Sarah turned to look at Kyle and found him staring at her with an intensity that stole her breath. His amber eyes were almost glowing, and she could see the pulse hammering in his throat. "Kyle?" Her voice came out smaller than intended. "You're sent," he said hoarsely. "Ever since you carried Eli out of that storm, I've been trying to convince myself I'm imagining it. That the stress is making me delusional." "What does it smell like?" Sarah whispered, even though part of her already knew the answer. "Lavender and rain, wild honey, and something uniquely you." Kale took a step closer, and Sarah could see the war happening behind his eyes. "It smells like every morning I've ever woken up alone and wished I hadn't. Like every cold night I've spent wondering if I'd die without ever finding—" He stopped abruptly, his entire body going rigid. "Finding what?" Sarah's heart was racing now, her body responding to something primal she didn't understand. "You." The word came out like a confession. "It smells like you're mine." The world tilted. Sarah's rational mind screamed that this was impossible. They'd known each other less than a day, but her body was singing a different song entirely, one that recognized the truth in his words even if she couldn't explain it. "I'm human," she managed. "How can I be—" "I don't know." Kale's hands were shaking now, and Sarah realized he was holding himself back with visible effort. "It shouldn't be possible. True mates are always within the same species, but every instinct I have is screaming that you're mine to protect. Mine to—" "Mama! Alpha! Look!" They both turned to see Eli standing in the stream, his small body beginning to shimmer with an otherworldly light. His eyes had gone completely amber, and the air around him crackled with energy. "He's shifting," Kale breathed, wonder and terror mixing in his voice. "Is that good?" Sarah asked urgently. "I don't know. He's too young, too unstable. If he can't complete the shift—" Eli cried out, his small body convulsing. Without thinking, Sarah splashed into the stream and wrapped her arms around him, pulling him close. "It's okay, baby. I've got you." The moment she touched him, something extraordinary happened. The wild energy that had been tearing through Eli's small frame seemed to stabilize, flowing through Sarah and grounding itself. The light around him softened, and his trembling eased. Behind her, Kale made a sound somewhere between a growl and a gasp. "Impossible," he whispered. "You're channeling his energy, stabilizing his shift. Only a true Luna can do that." Sarah looked down at Eli, who had stopped convulsing and was now breathing steadily in her arms, his eyes slowly returning to normal. "What does that mean?" she asked, though deep down, she already knew. Kale's voice was raw with emotion. "It means fate has answered my prayers, and possibly doomed us all." Chapter 5. The Luna's Mark. The cabin felt smaller that evening, charged with an energy that made Sarah's skin prickle. Eli had finally fallen asleep after his near shift, curled up on the couch with his small hand still clutching the edge of Sarah's sleeve. She sat beside him, unable to move, unable to process what had happened at the stream. Kale stood by the window, his back to her, tension radiating from every line of his body. He'd barely spoken since they'd returned, and the silence was becoming unbearable. "Say something," Sarah finally whispered. "Please." "What do you want me to say?" Kale's voice was strained. "That I've spent 8 years believing I'd never find my mate? That I'd accepted dying alone as the price of leadership? That I never imagined she'd be human? Is that what I am?" Your mate? Kale turned, and the raw hunger in his eyes made her breath catch. My wolf knows you are. Has known since the moment I caught your scent in that storm. But my mind... He ran a hand through his dark hair. This complicates everything. Because I'm human. Because you're mine. The possessiveness in his tone sent heat flooding through her. Do you understand what that means? The moment the pack discovers this, and they will discover it, you'll become a target. Every wolf who wants to challenge my authority will come after you first. Sarah's spine straightened. I've been running from people who wanted to control me for months. At least with you, I know what I'm fighting for. You're fighting for a child who might die in 3 days. For an alpha who's lost the respect of his pack. For a bond that shouldn't exist. Kale crossed to her, kneeling so they were eye level. This isn't some romantic story, Sarah. This is dangerous. Bloody. And once you're marked as mine, there's no going back. Marked? Kale's hand moved to her throat, his fingers ghosting over her pulse point with devastating gentleness. A mating bite. Here. It would bond us permanently, make you Luna of Silvercrest, and give Eli the protection he needs. But it would also paint a target on your back that would never wash off. Sarah's heart hammered against his touch. And if I'm willing to take that risk, then you're either the bravest woman I've ever met, or the most reckless. His thumb traced her jawline, and Sarah felt herself leaning into the contact despite every warning her rational mind was screaming. Probably both. Kale. His name felt right on her tongue, natural. What happens if we don't do this? If we refuse the bond? Pain flickered across his face. Eli dies. I probably die defending him. And you... He swallowed hard. You walk away and try to forget this ever happened. Could you forget? Could your wolf let me just walk away? The growl that rumbled through Kale's chest was answer enough. His eyes flashed amber, and Sarah realized she was seeing the wolf beneath the man. Wild, possessive, and barely controlled. No, he admitted roughly. My wolf would hunt you to the ends of the earth. Would track your scent through cities and forests until I found you again. And even if I locked myself away to keep you safe, every day without you would be torture. Then we don't have a choice, do we? Sarah's voice was steadier than she felt. Not really. There's always a choice. Not when it comes to protecting him. Sarah looked down at Eli's sleeping face. Not when I've already promised to stay. Kale studied her for a long moment, his amber eyes searching hers. You realize what you're agreeing to? A mating bond isn't just protection for Eli. It's permanent. Unbreakable. You'd be bound to me, to my pack, my world, my wars, for the rest of your life. I spent 26 years bound to people who saw me as property, Sarah said quietly. At least this time, I'm choosing it. Something shifted in Kale's expression. Awe mixed with an emotion so intense it made her tremble. You're remarkable, he breathed. Absolutely remarkable. Before she could respond, he stood abruptly, putting distance between them. But not tonight. You need to understand what you're agreeing to. Tomorrow, I'll take you to meet the Pack Council. Let them see you. See Eli with you. If they accept you as Luna, the mating can proceed. If they don't... What happens if they don't? Kale's jaw clenched. Then I challenge every council member to ritual combat. Winner takes all. You'd fight your entire council? Alone? I've done it before. The casual way he said it sent chills down her spine. How do you think I became alpha at 23? Later, that night, Sarah lay in the small bedroom Kale had given her, staring at the ceiling. Sleep eluded her, her mind churning with everything that had happened. Through the thin walls, she could hear Cale moving around the main room, his footsteps restless. Unable to stand the separation any longer, she rose and padded to the door. Cale stood shirtless by the fireplace, his back to her. In the flickering light, she could see the scars that covered his skin. Some old and faded, others still pink and healing. The body of a warrior who'd fought for every inch of his authority. "Can't sleep?" he asked without turning. "Neither can you, apparently." Kyle turned, and Sarah tried not to stare at the muscled planes of his chest, the way firelight cast shadows across his abdomen. "I'm trying to figure out how to keep you alive tomorrow." "That's reassuring." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "The council will test you. Try to frighten you away. If they sense any weakness, any hesitation." "I won't hesitate." Sarah moved closer. "I meant what I said. I'm choosing this." "Why?" The question burst from him. "Why would you chain yourself to this mess? To me?" Sarah thought about her answer carefully. "Do you know what it's like to spend your whole life being told who you should be? What you should want? I was engaged to a man I didn't love, preparing to live a life that would slowly kill everything real inside me. And then I ran, and I've been running ever since, wondering if I'd ever find something worth stopping for." She stood before him now, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his skin. "Maybe I'm not ready to call this love. Maybe it's too soon, too fast, too impossible. But when I look at Eli, when I think about walking away from him," her voice cracked, "I can't. And when I think about what you've sacrificed, how you've fought alone for so long." "Sarah." Her name was a warning and a plea. "Let me finish." She reached up, her hand hovering over his chest. "When I'm near you, I don't feel like I'm running anymore. I feel like I've finally found something real, something worth the risk." Kyle caught her hand, pressing it flat against his heart. His pulse thundered beneath her palm, as wild and erratic as her own. "You undo me," he confessed roughly. "Every defense I've built, every wall I've constructed to survive, you tear through them like they're paper. It's terrifying." "Good," Sarah whispered. "I'm terrified too." They stood there, caught in the space between what they were and what they could become. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the distance a wolf howled, a sound both lonely and defiant. "Tomorrow changes everything," Kyle said finally. "After tomorrow there's no hiding, no more pretending this is temporary." "Then let's not waste tonight pretending we're not scared." Kale's free hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone with devastating tenderness. "I won't let them hurt you, no matter what it costs." "I know." And she did. Whatever else was uncertain, she trusted that truth completely. They stood there until the fire burned low, neither willing to be the first to let go, both knowing that dawn would bring trials that would test every promise they'd made. Chapter 6. The Council's Judgment. The Silvercrest Pack grounds sprawled across a clearing deep in the mountain forest, marked by standing stones that hummed with ancient magic. Sarah stood beside Cale, acutely aware of the dozens of amber eyes watching her from the shadows. Eli clung to her hand, his small body pressed against her leg. He'd been silent since they'd arrived, sensing the hostility that permeated the air like smoke. "Stay close to me," Cale murmured, his hand resting protectively on the small of her back. "Don't show fear. They can smell it." 7 figures emerged from the largest structure, a longhouse built from massive logs, the Pack Council. Sarah recognized Luna Thorne among them, but the others were strangers. Hard faces, cold eyes, bodies that moved with predatory grace. The man who led them was massive, easily matching Cale in height, but broader through the shoulders. His hair was iron gray, and a jagged scar ran from his temple to his jaw. Alpha Kale. His voice was gravel and ice. You've called for counsel, and you've brought guests. Elder Marcus. Kale's tone was respectful but firm. I've brought my mate, and the future heir of Silvercrest. A ripple of shock and anger moved through the assembled wolves. Sarah felt Eli tremble against her leg and squeezed his hand reassuringly. Your mate? A woman stepped forward, sleek and beautiful, with midnight black hair and eyes that held barely concealed rage. You expect us to believe a human is your true mate? I don't expect anything, Vera. Kale's voice hardened. I'm stating fact. Sarah Wade is mine. My wolf has claimed her. Convenient, Marcus said, his eyes raking over Sarah with open disdain. The failed Omega needs protection, and suddenly you discover your mate? Forgive us if we question the timing. Question all you want. Kale moved slightly forward, placing himself between Sarah and the council. The bond is real, and under pack law, my mate becomes Luna, which means Eli falls under her protection. Pack law also states that a Luna must be tested. Another council member interjected, a wiry man with sharp features, proven worthy of the title. Then test me. Sarah's voice cut through the tension, surprising even herself. She felt Kale stiffen beside her, but she stepped forward. Whatever you need to see, I'll show you. Marcus's scarred face twisted into something that might have been a smile. Brave words. Let's see if you can back them up. He gestured, and two wolves emerged from the crowd. Young males, their eyes gleaming with challenge. They circled Sarah slowly, and she forced herself to stand still, even as every instinct screamed at her to run. The first test, Marcus announced, is dominance. Can you face a wolf's challenge without breaking? The wolves moved closer, their lips pulling back to reveal impressive fangs. One of them growled, low and threatening. Sarah's heart hammered, but she kept her eyes forward, refusing to look away. She's terrified, Vera said dismissively. I can smell it from here. Fear doesn't mean weakness, Luna Thorne spoke up quietly. It means she's smart enough to understand the danger. But look, she hasn't run. It was true. Despite the trembling in her legs, despite the cold sweat sliding down her spine, Sarah held her ground. She thought of Eli behind her, of Kale's unwavering presence, of every moment in her old life when she'd wanted to run, but hadn't. Enough, Kale growled, and both wolves immediately backed off. He moved to Sarah's side, his hand finding hers. She passed your test. That was barely a test at all, Marcus countered. The second trial requires more. Let's see if she can truly stabilize the boy. Eli was brought forward, and Sarah could see the fear in his wide amber eyes. The council formed a circle around them, their combined presence making the air feel thick and oppressive. Force his shift, Marcus commanded. If you're truly meant to be Luna, you should be able to control his transformation. He's 4 years old, Sarah protested. Forcing it could hurt him. Then he's already dead. Marcus's voice was cold. Better to know now than waste the pack's resources protecting the weak. Rage flooded through Sarah, hot and righteous. He's not weak. He's a child. Then prove he's worth protecting. Sarah looked at Kale, saw the tension in his jaw, the way his hands had curled into fists. He couldn't intervene, not without undermining the entire process. This was her test. Her choice. She knelt before Eli, taking his small face in her hands. Hey, sweetheart, look at me. Eli's eyes were filling with tears. I can't do it, Mama. I'm not strong enough. Yes, you are. Sarah kept her voice gentle but firm. You're one of the strongest people I know. You've survived when others said you couldn't. You've kept hoping when it would have been easier to give up. That's real strength. But what if I fail? What if I can't change? Sarah pulled him into her arms, feeling the rapid flutter of his heartbeat against her chest. Around them, the wolves watched with cold calculation, but she blocked them out. There was only Eli, only this moment. "Listen to me," she whispered. "You don't have to change to prove you're worthy. You don't have to be anything other than exactly who you are. But if you want to try, if you're ready, then I'm right here. I won't let go." She felt it then, that same energy she'd sensed by the stream. It pulsed beneath Eli's skin, wild and chaotic, searching for an anchor. Without thinking, Sarah opened herself to it, letting the energy flow through her the way it had before. "That's it," she murmured. "I've got you. Just breathe." Eli's body began to shimmer, light spilling from his skin. The watching wolves murmured in surprise, but Sarah kept her focus on the boy in her arms. She could feel his fear, his uncertainty, and beneath it all, the wolf that was trying so desperately to emerge. "You're safe," she promised. "No matter what happens, you're safe with me." The transformation happened slowly, beautifully. Eli's small body shifted and reformed, bones lengthening, fur sprouting in silver gold waves. And through it all, Sarah held him, channeling the wild energy, keeping him anchored. When it was done, a wolf pup stood before her, small and delicate, but whole. His amber eyes blinked up at her with unmistakable recognition and love. The clearing had gone silent. Sarah looked up to find every wolf staring at her with expressions ranging from shock to awe. Even Marcus's scarred face had lost some of its hardness. "Impossible," Vera breathed. "No human should be able to. She's not just human anymore." Luna Thorne's voice rang, with certainty. The moment she bonded with the boy, the moment she opened herself to his energy, she became something more. Something the pack hasn't seen in generations. "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, still kneeling beside the wolf pup who was now pressing against her side. Luna's eyes met hers. "You're a bridge, child. Between human and wolf. Between the old ways and new. The kind of Luna legends are written about." Marcus stepped forward, and for the first time, his expression held something other than contempt. "The council will deliberate," he announced. "But I will say this. What I witnessed today defies everything I thought I knew about the bond between humans and wolves." He turned his gaze to Cale. "You may have found something worth fighting for after all, Alpha." As the council dispersed, Cale pulled Sarah to her feet, his eyes blazing with emotion. "You were magnificent," he said hoarsely. But Sarah barely heard him. She was watching Eli, now in his wolf form, playing with the other pack pups who had cautiously approached. For the first time since she'd found him, he looked like he belonged. "What happens now?" she asked. Cale's hand tightened on hers. "Now, we wait for their decision, and pray that what you showed them today was enough." Chapter 7. Shadows of the Past. They returned to the cabin as dusk painted the sky in shades of crimson and gold. Eli, still in his wolf form, trotted between them, his tail wagging with a joy Sarah hadn't seen before. The successful shift had changed something in him, given him confidence that radiated from his small frame. But the victory felt fragile, temporary, like a breath held too long. "How long until the council decides?" Sarah asked as Cale built up the fire. "They'll deliberate through the night. By dawn, we'll have their answer." He didn't look at her, his movements precise and controlled. Too controlled. "You're worried." "I'm always worried." But his jaw was tight, his shoulders tense. "What you did," Today, it was extraordinary, but it also revealed how powerful you could become. And power makes people nervous. Sarah settled on the couch, watching as Eli curled up on the rug, his small wolf body already drifting towards sleep. Luna said I'm a bridge. What did she mean? Cale was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. When he finally spoke, his voice was distant. There are stories, old legends about humans who could bond with wolves so completely that they gained our abilities without losing their humanity. They were called moon-touched, blessed by the goddess herself. You think that's what I am? I think you're something the pack hasn't seen in over a century. He turned to face her, and the intensity in his amber eyes stole her breath. And that makes you either our salvation or our greatest threat, depending on who's judging. Which am I to you? The question hung between them, weighted with everything unsaid. Cale crossed the room slowly, deliberately, until he stood before her. His hand reached out, fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face with devastating gentleness. You're the answer to a prayer I stopped believing in, he said roughly. You're the reason my wolf finally has peace after years of restless hunting. His voice broke. You're everything I can't afford to lose. Sarah's heart thundered. Then don't lose me. It's not that simple. But even as he said it, his thumb traced her jawline, his touch reverent. If the council rejects you, if they see you as a threat to pack stability, they'll demand I choose. You or my position as alpha. And if they make you choose, Cale's eyes flashed amber, then I'll burn my position to the ground before I let them touch you. The raw certainty in his voice sent heat flooding through her. You'd give up everything? Your pack, your authority, your entire world? My world is standing in front of me. His other hand came up to cup her face, his touch gentle despite the fierce emotion in his gaze. Everything else is just noise. Sarah leaned into his touch, feeling the calluses on his palms, the slight tremor in his fingers. I've never had anyone fight for me before. Not like this. Then they were fools. Cale's voice dropped to a growl. You're worth burning the whole world down for. The space between them felt electric, charged with a tension that had been building since that first night in the storm. Sarah's breath came faster, her body responding to his nearness in ways that had nothing to do with logic or caution. Cale, she whispered, if we do this, if we complete the bond, there's no going back. You said so yourself. I know. His forehead pressed against hers, his breath warm against her lips. But I stopped being able to go back the moment I caught your scent, the moment my wolf recognized you as mine. I don't know how to be a Luna. I don't know your world, your laws, You don't have to know. His hands slid into her hair, tilting, her face up to his. You just have to be you. Brave and fierce and willing to stand in a circle of wolves to protect a child you barely know. That's what makes you Luna. That's what makes you mine. The kiss, when it came, was inevitable. His lips claimed hers with a hunger that spoke of months, years, of loneliness and longing. Sarah melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer even though there was no space left between them. He kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning, like she was the answer to every question he'd ever asked. And Sarah kissed him back with equal desperation, pouring every emotion she couldn't name into the connection between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cale rested his forehead against hers again. The mating bite, he said hoarsely. Once I give it, you'll be bound to me. You'll feel what I feel, know what I know. My wolf will recognize you as pack, as Luna, as mate. And if anything ever happened to me, don't. Sarah pressed her fingers to his lips. Don't talk about that. I have to. His eyes were tortured. You need to understand what you're signing up for. If I die, you'll feel it. The bond will tear at you, try to pull you after me. Some mates don't survive it. Then don't die. She tried to make it sound light, but her voice shook. Kale's laugh was bitter. I'm an alpha who's defied his counsel, protected a forbidden child, and claimed a human mate. I have a target on my back the size of the full moon. Then we fight. Sarah gripped his shirt tighter. Together. Isn't that what mates do? Something shifted in his expression, surprise mixed with wonder. You really mean that? You'd fight beside me, even knowing what it could cost? I've spent my whole life running from fights I should have stood for. Sarah met his gaze steadily. I'm done running. If the council wants to challenge us, let them come. They'll learn what happens when you threaten my family. Your family, Cale repeated softly, and she saw the moment the words hit him. The way his eyes widened, then softened with an emotion so intense it made her chest ache. Eli's mine now, she said firmly. And so are you. That makes us family. And I protect what's mine. Kyle pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. She felt him trembling. This powerful alpha who commanded hundreds of wolves, shaking in her arms like he couldn't quite believe she was real. I don't deserve you, he whispered against her neck. Good thing fate doesn't care about deserve. Sarah held him tighter. It just cares about right. They stayed like that, wrapped in each other while the fire crackled and Eli slept peacefully nearby. Outside, the moon rose higher, waxing toward fullness. 2 more nights until the council's deadline. 2 more nights until everything changed. But for now, in this moment, they had each other. And sometimes, that was enough. A howl split the night, close, threatening, and filled with challenge. Cale's head snapped up, his body going rigid. Eli woke with a startled yelp, his small wolf form scrambling toward Sarah. What is it? Sarah asked, her heart racing. Cale's eyes had gone full amber, his canines lengthening. The council's made their decision, he growled, and someone doesn't like it. Before Sarah could respond, the cabin door exploded inward in a shower of splinters. 3 massive wolves stood in the doorway, their eyes glowing with feral hunger. And behind them, Vera's human form emerged from the darkness, her smile sharp and cruel. Hello, Alpha, she purred. We need to talk about your human problem. Chapter 8. Blood and Moonlight. Kyle moved with blinding speed, placing himself between Sarah and the intruders. His body rippled with barely contained violence, and Sarah could feel the rage pouring off him in waves. You dare enter my home uninvited. His voice was no longer entirely human. Something primal and dangerous threaded through every word. You dare threaten what's mine! Vera laughed, the sound cold and sharp. Your home? This is pack territory, Alpha. Or have you forgotten that in your obsession with the human? Get out. Each word was a growl. Now, before I forget your counsel. The council voted, Vera continued, ignoring his warning. Her eyes flicked to Sarah with pure venom. 3-4. You lost, Cale. The human is rejected. The Omega will be culled at dawn. Sarah felt the words like a physical blow, but it was Eli's terrified whimper that shattered her. The small wolf pup had pressed himself against her legs, trembling violently. The vote wasn't complete. Luna Thorne's voice rang out as she appeared in the doorway behind Vera. I invoked the right of challenge. The decision stands in abeyance until... Until what? Vera whirled on the elder healer. Until this human somehow proves herself worthy? She's had her chance. She got lucky with 1 successful shift. That doesn't make her Luna. It makes her more than you'll ever be, Kyle snarled. At least she has a heart beneath her ambition. Vera's eyes flashed dangerously. Careful, Alpha. Some might say you've gone soft, that your judgment is clouded by... Her gaze raked over Sarah with disgust. Baser instincts. My judgment, Kyle said with deadly calm, is the only thing keeping you alive right now. The three wolves in the doorway began to growl, their hackles raised. Sarah could feel the violence building, taste it in the air like copper. Her hands moved instinctively to Eli, shielding him. You want a challenge? Vera stepped forward, her body beginning to shimmer. Then let's make this official. I challenge your choice of mate. Tomorrow night, under the full moon, let the pack decide. You're human against a true wolf. Let's see who's worthy of being Luna. No. Kale's refusal was absolute. I won't put her in danger to satisfy your jealousy. Jealousy? Vera's laugh was brittle. You think I want you? I want what you've stolen from this pack. Our pride, our traditions, our strength. You've made us weak, Kale. First with your soft laws, then with your protection of that abomination. She gestured viciously at Eli. And now with this human whore. Kale's shift started before Sarah could blink. His body exploded outward, bones cracking and reforming, fur erupting across his skin. Within seconds, a massive black wolf stood where the man had been, easily twice the size of the wolves in the doorway, his eyes blazing with primal fury. The message was clear. Call her that again, and die. But Sarah found her voice before violence could erupt. I accept. Every head turned toward her. Kale's wolf form went rigid, a sound between a whine and a growl emerging from his throat. Sarah, no, Lunathorn started. I accept the challenge, Sarah repeated, her voice stronger now. She stood, gently moving Eli behind her. Tomorrow night, under the full moon, your best wolf against me. Vera's smile was triumphant and cruel. You have no idea what you've just agreed to. I know exactly what I'm agreeing to. Sarah met her gaze steadily. A chance to prove that strength isn't just about claws and fangs. That being Luna means more than being born into it. How touching. Vera's tone dripped with mockery. But when my champion tears you apart tomorrow night, remember, you chose this. You chose to stand between us and restoring order to this pack. And you'll remember, Sarah shot back, that I'm standing between you and a child. If that's what you call order, then your pack is already broken. For a moment, genuine surprise flickered across Vera's face. Then she turned, gesturing to her wolves. Tomorrow night, human. The challenge circle. Don't be late. She paused at the door. Oh, and Kyle? When she's dead, we'll be coming for the Omega next. You can't protect them both. The wolves vanished into the darkness, leaving shattered wood and tension thick enough to choke on. Kale shifted back to human form immediately, his naked body trembling with barely suppressed rage. He didn't seem to notice or care about his nudity as he rounded on Sarah. What were you thinking? His voice was raw. Do you have any idea what you just agreed to? I was thinking about Eli, Sarah replied, keeping her voice calm even though her heart was racing. I was thinking that if I don't do this, they'll find another way to take him. At least this way, we control the terms. Control? Kale grabbed her shoulders, his grip just shy of painful. You'll be facing their strongest fighter in ritual combat. No rules, no mercy, no... His voice broke. I can't watch you die, Sarah. I won't survive it. Then help me not die. She reached up, covering his hands with hers. You said I'm moon-touched, that I have power I don't understand yet. So teach me. We have until tomorrow night. That's not enough time. It has to be. Sarah's voice softened. Because the alternative is letting them win. Letting them hurt Eli. And I won't do that. I can't. Luna Thorne stepped forward, her expression grave. She's right, Kale. This was always going to come to a head. At least this way, it's official. Witnessed. Whatever happens in that circle tomorrow night will be binding. And if she loses? Kyle's anguish was palpable. Then the pack votes to exile you both. And Eli... Luna couldn't finish. Sarah felt Eli press closer against her legs, still in his wolf form. She knelt, running her hands through his soft fur. We won't lose, she promised, though she had no idea how she'd keep that promise. Kale watched them, his amber eyes tortured. Finally, he seemed to come to a decision. Luna, take Eli to your cottage. He'll be safe there tonight. And what will you two be doing? Luna asked knowingly. Teaching her to survive. Kale's voice had gone hard, determined. If she's going to face a wolf in combat, she needs every advantage I can give her. Luna nodded, gently coaxing Eli to follow her. The small wolf looked back at Sarah with worried eyes, and she gave him what she hoped was a reassuring smile. I'll see you tomorrow, sweetheart. I promise. Once they were alone, Kale pulled on pants from a trunk in the corner, then turned to face her fully. The raw emotion in his eyes made her chest ache. You realize what tomorrow means? He asked quietly. If you enter that circle, if you accept the bond tonight to give you the best chance of survival, there's no walking away. Win or lose, you're mine forever. I know. Sarah crossed to him, placing her hand over his heart. And you're mine. So let's make sure I win. Kale pulled her close, his lips finding hers in a kiss that tasted of desperation and determination. When he pulled back, his eyes were blazing. Then we'd better get started, because I'm not losing you before I've even had the chance to love you properly. The words hung in the air between them, a promise, a vow, and a challenge to fate itself. Chapter 9. The Mating Bond. The forest behind the cabin was silver under the waxing moon, 2 nights from full. Kale led Sarah deep into the trees, to a clearing where ancient stones formed a perfect circle. A sacred space humming with old magic. This is where alphas have claimed their mates for generations, Kale said quietly. Where the bond between human and wolf was first forged, before the packs forgot how. Sarah stepped into the center of the circle, feeling the energy thrumming beneath her feet. What do I need to do? First, you need to understand what you're becoming. Kale moved to face her, his expression intense. The mating bond isn't just romantic connection. It's a merging of souls, of essences. When I bite you, when my wolf marks you as mine, you'll gain access to abilities you've never had. Strength, speed, healing, but more than that. I'll feel what you feel, Sarah finished. Know what you know. Yes, and I'll know you the same way. His hand came up to cup her face. Every fear, every hope, every secret you've ever buried. There'll be no hiding from each other. Sarah's breath caught. That's terrifying. It is, he agreed, but it's also the most honest thing in existence. No lies, no masks, no pretending, just raw truth between 2 souls. She thought about her old life, the constant performance, the carefully maintained facade, the exhaustion of never being allowed to be real. And you want that? To see all of me? Even the broken parts? Especially the broken parts. Kale's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. Because I'm broken too, Sarah. I've killed to keep my position. I've made choices that haunt me. I've been alone so long I forgot what it felt like to want someone to see the real me. I see you, she whispered. The fierce alpha and the man who cries when he thinks no one's watching. The warrior and the protector who's terrified of failing the people he loves. Kale's eyes widened. How did you... Because I pay attention. Sarah's hand covered his heart. Because beneath all your armor, you're just someone who wants to be enough. Just like me. The vulnerability in his expression nearly undid her. You're more than enough, he said roughly. You're everything. Then show me. She tilted her face up to his. Teach me how to fight as your mate. How to be Luna. How to protect what's ours. Kale's eyes flashed amber. The bond will hurt at first. My wolf's energy merging with your human essence. It'll feel like lightning in your veins. Some people pass out, others scream. But once it settles, once your body accepts the change, I'll be stronger. You'll be magnificent. His hands framed her face. But Sarah, once I do this, there's no taking it back. Even if you die tomorrow, even if... His voice cracked. You'll be mine until my last breath and beyond. Good. She pulled him closer, feeling his heart thunder against hers. Because I'm tired of belonging to people who never wanted me. I'm ready to belong to someone who does. The kiss was different this time, deeper, more urgent, laced with the weight of irrevocable choice. Kale's hands slid into her hair, tilting her head to expose her throat. His lips traced the path his teeth would soon follow, and Sarah shivered at the promise in his touch. Tell me yes, he growled against her skin. Tell me you want this. Want me. Yes. The word came out breathless. I want this. I want you. I want... His teeth pierced her throat. The pain was instant and blinding, sharp heat that radiated from the bite point through her entire body. But beneath the pain came something else, a rush of power so intense it drove her to her knees. Kyle went down with her, his arms banding around her waist, holding her upright as his wolf's essence poured into her blood. Sarah could feel him, not just physically, but everywhere. His fierce protectiveness, his bone-deep loneliness, his terror of losing her and Eli. The weight of 8 years as alpha, every life lost, every hard choice made. The moment he'd first caught her scent in the storm and known, with absolute certainty, that his search was over. And beneath it all, a love so intense it threatened to consume them both. Mine, his wolf's voice echoed through her mind. Ours. Pack. Mate. Forever. Yours, she thought back, and felt his shock and wonder at hearing her voice in his head. The energy built higher, crackling through her veins like wildfire. Her skin felt too tight, her bones aching with the need to shift. But she held human form through sheer will. She wasn't ready to become wolf. Not yet. But she could feel the potential there, coiled beneath her skin, waiting. Kale's teeth released her throat, his tongue laving the wound closed. Already she could feel it healing, faster than should be possible, the broken skin knitting together until only 2 small scars remained. His mark. Forever. Sarah. Her name was a prayer and a plea. Are you... I'm okay. Her voice was stronger now, steadier. She looked up at him, and from the shock in his eyes, she knew hers had changed. What color are they? Gold. His voice was awed. Not amber like born wolves, but pure gold. Like sunlight. She could feel it now, the enhanced senses flooding through her. Every rustle in the undergrowth, every shift in the wind, every heartbeat within 100 yards. The world had exploded into high definition, overwhelming and exhilarating. That's not all, Kyle said, taking her hand and pulling her to her feet. Try this. He released her hand and moved 20 feet away in a blink. Sarah stared at where he'd been, then her body moved on instinct. One moment she was across the clearing, the next she stood in front of him, her hand pressed against his chest. She'd crossed the distance in less than a second. How? The bond, Kale explained, his hands settling on her waist. You're connected to my wolf now. You can access some of our abilities even in human form. Speed, strength, healing, and his expression turned serious. The ability to command wolves who rank below Luna, which is everyone except you. And the Council Alphas, he corrected. They're strong enough to resist unless you learn to channel your authority properly, which is what we're going to work on, all night if necessary. Sarah felt the new power humming through her veins, wild and barely contained. What if I can't control it in time? You will. Kale's confidence was absolute. Because you're the woman who stood in a circle of hostile wolves to protect a child, who agreed to face ritual combat to save him, who chose this bond knowing it might be your last choice. His forehead pressed against hers. You're already Luna, Sarah. Tomorrow night, you just have to prove it to everyone else. She felt his love through the bond, fierce and protective and completely certain. It filled the hollow spaces inside her, the wounds left by years of never being enough. Teach me, she whispered. Show me how to be the Luna they need. Kale's smile was wild and proud. I thought you'd never ask. They trained through the night, Kale teaching her to harness the power flowing through her veins, how to move with wolf speed, how to sense attacks before they came, how to project authority that would make lesser wolves submit. But more than techniques, he taught her something else. How to trust the bond between them, to lean on his strength when hers faltered. As dawn painted the sky pink and gold, Sarah stood in the center of the stone circle, her body aching but her spirit fierce. Tonight, she would face Vera's champion. Tonight, she would prove she was worthy of being Luna. Or she would die trying. Chapter 10. The Challenge Circle. The entire Silvercrest pack had gathered by sunset. Sarah stood at the edge of the clearing, watching as wolves in both human and animal forms filled the space around the ancient challenge circle. The air crackled with anticipation and bloodlust. They'd come to see a spectacle, and she was the main event. Kyle stood beside her, his presence a solid anchor in the chaos. Through their bond, she could feel his fear warring with pride, his desperate need to protect her clashing with the knowledge that this was her fight to win. You don't have to do this, he said quietly, for perhaps the 100th time that day. We can run. Take Eli and disappear. I know places even the pack couldn't find us. And spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders? Sarah shook her head. No, this ends tonight. One way or another. Eli pressed against her other side, back in human form and clinging to her hand. Luna Thorne had brought him at sunset, and the boy hadn't left Sarah's side since. His small face was pinched with worry. You're going to win, right, Mama? His voice was barely a whisper. You have to win. Sarah knelt, pulling him into a fierce hug. I'm going to fight with everything I have. And no matter what happens, you remember that you're loved. You're wanted. You're perfect exactly as you are. Eli's arms tightened around her neck. I love you, Mama. The words pierced straight through her heart. She'd never imagined she'd have this. Someone who loved her not for what she could provide, but simply for being herself. I love you too, sweetheart, she whispered back. A howl cut through the evening air, and the crowd parted. Vera strode into the clearing, her expression triumphant. Behind her walked a man who made Sarah's blood run cold. He was massive, even larger than Kale, with scars crisscrossing his bare chest and arms like a roadmap of violence. His eyes were flat and emotionless, the gaze of someone who'd killed so many times, it no longer registered. Sarah Wade, Vera announced, her voice carrying across the clearing. Meet Dante Blackmaw, former alpha of the Northridge Pack before he was exiled for excessive brutality. He's agreed to be my champion in exchange for sanctuary in Silvercrest. Kale's growl was immediate and vicious. You brought an exile into our territory? That's against laws you've bent repeatedly for your pet human and Omega? Vera's smile was sharp. I thought we were evolving beyond the old ways, Alpha. Isn't that what you've been preaching? The crowd murmured, some in agreement, others in unease. Sarah could feel the pack's division, those loyal to Kale's vision, and those hungry for the brutal traditions Vera represented. Elder Marcus stepped forward, his scarred face impassive. The challenge has been issued and accepted. The terms are simple. The human fights Vera's champion in the circle until one yields or dies. If the human wins, she's accepted as Luna, and the Omega is granted full pack protection. If she loses... He paused, his eyes finding Eli. The Omega is culled, and Alpha Kale is stripped of his position. No! Kale lunged forward, but Luna Thorne's hand on his arm stopped him. Those terms weren't agreed to, Kale snarled. The council voted while you were occupied. Vera's gaze flicked meaningfully to the bite mark on Sarah's throat. We decided that if your judgment regarding the human is flawed, then your judgment overall is compromised. This challenge tests everything. Your choice of mate, your protection of the Omega, your fitness to lead. Through their bond, Sarah felt Kale's fury and helplessness. They'd been outmaneuvered. If she refused to fight now, Kale would lose everything trying to protect her anyway. She stood, gently extracting herself from Eli's grip. I understand the terms, she said clearly, and I accept them. Dante Blackmaw smiled for the first time, a cold, predatory expression that promised pain. Finally. I was getting bored. Sarah stepped into the challenge circle, feeling the ancient magic activate beneath her feet. The stones began to glow with pale moonlight, creating a barrier that would contain the fight. Once inside, there was no escape until it was finished. Kale caught her hand as she passed. Remember what I taught you, he said urgently. Don't try to match his strength. Use your speed, your instincts, and... His voice dropped. Trust the bond. I'm with you. Always. Sarah squeezed his hand once, then released it. She walked to the center of the circle, her heart steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. Around the perimeter, wolves pressed close, their eyes gleaming in the gathering darkness. Dante entered from the opposite side, cracking his knuckles. I'll try to make this quick, he said conversationally. Nothing personal, just business. Everything's personal, Sarah replied. You just haven't figured that out yet. His eyebrow raised. Bold words from prey. The full moon crested the horizon, and Elder Marcus's voice rang out. Let the challenge begin. Dante shifted instantly, his body exploding into a wolf form even larger than Kale's, with fur the color of dried blood and teeth like daggers. He didn't wait, didn't posture. Just launched, himself at Sarah with blinding speed. But she was already moving. The bond sang through her veins, Kale's battle instincts merging with her own. She rolled beneath Dante's attack, coming up on his flank. Her hand lashed out, not claws. She was still human. But with the enhanced strength of the mating bond, her strike had real force. Dante yelped in surprise, spinning to face her. His eyes narrowed with new respect and calculation. Good. Kale's voice whispered through their connection. Keep him off balance. He expects you to be weak. Sarah circled, her movements fluid. She could feel every shift in the air, every tell before Dante moved. The bond made her hyper-aware, processing information faster than her human mind should be able to. Dante feinted left, then lunged right. Sarah barely dodged, his fangs grazing her shoulder. Pain lanced through her, but already she felt it healing, slower than a born wolf, but faster than human. "You're doing great," Kale encouraged. "But you need to go, on offense. Show them you're not just surviving." Sarah knew he was right. Defensive fighting wouldn't win this. She needed to prove she was Luna, not just Kale's mate, but a leader in her own right. She reached deep into the bond, pulling on the power there. Energy flooded through her, wild, primal, electric. Her eyes blazed gold, and when she opened her mouth, the sound that emerged was half human command, half wolf authority. "Submit!" The word cracked across the clearing like thunder. Dante stumbled, his wolf form wavering as the Luna command hit him. It wasn't enough to make him yield. He was too strong, too experienced, but it shocked him. Shocked everyone. A human shouldn't be able to issue commands, not even a mated human. "That's my girl." Kale's pride poured through their bond, giving her strength. But Dante recovered quickly, rage replacing surprise. He'd been humiliated in front of the pack, made to stumble by a human. His next attack was pure fury, reckless and brutal. Sarah dodged once, twice, but on the third strike his massive paw caught her across the ribs. She felt bones crack, pain exploding through her chest. She hit the ground hard, gasping. Through the bond, Kale's anguish nearly overwhelmed her. His need to intervene was a physical force, but the circle's magic held him back. "Get up," he begged. "Please, Sarah, get up." She could hear Eli crying somewhere beyond the barrier. Could feel the pack's bloodlust rising as Dante stalked toward her, preparing for the killing blow. Everything hurt. Her ribs were broken, her shoulder bleeding, her body screaming for her to yield. But then she thought about Eli's trusting face, about Kale's desperate hope, about every moment in her old life when she'd stayed down because it was easier than fighting. She was done staying down.